Rob Kramarz, Intelliversity. We're back here with Leading BioSciences. This is Geert Schmidt-Schoenbein and John Rodenreis. And I just want to remind you that this is not a solicitation to sell securities. It's not an offer to, rather it's not a solicitation for you to buy securities or an offer to sell securities. This is a training video for entrepreneurs and for investors to see really what makes a winning company win in the investment community and ultimately in the business community. What was really, you may have seen from the prior video, what's really exciting about Leading is that they're taking products, exciting products out of the, or technologies out of the labs at UC San Diego, possibly other places, and converting them into products that can be taken through the FDA process. And in this case, this is their primary product area is Geert's a series of products relating to the inflammatory process and specifically the cure for various kinds of shock. Am I understanding this correctly? And in the previous segment we talked about the technology, the science of it. If you could just give the listeners, the watchers, some idea of the magnitude of what you might be able to accomplish by having these products on the market.
Okay,
John?
This is probably the most serious unmet medical need in the U.S. We've thrown billions of dollars at it, and there is no drug on the market currently for this. So if we take septic shock, which is just one of the shock types, there are 215,000 deaths a year in the U.S. in 2007, and hospitals bill $38 billion. Now, we think we can make a significant dent in that. We don't know if it's 10%, 20%, 30%, but it's certainly significant. Geert's animal data has taken survival from 20% to about 85%. In the 13 patients that have been treated in Taipei, we've got an 88% survival. So the numbers pretty much correlate. If we could do that, it's going to have a dramatic impact on society and cost.
Right. Interesting. Isn't it true that the VA is involved in some of your testing? Is that good?
As of today's November 2011, we are in the process, in the, you may call more final stages of actually carrying out a clinical trial at the VA Medical Center here at UCSD.
There's obviously vets and who suffer from battlefield injuries as well as those later on in life could benefit tremendously by some way to treat shock.
Right. After surgery, there are many, many different ways in which you can end up in a state of shock.
This is exciting.
And the intervention that we have in mind is generic relatively. In other words, it doesn't make a difference how you arrived in this matter of shock. But we are trying to avoid that you now go into this lethal progression where just one organ after the other one fails.
You know, it's funny, my mother is presently suffering from stage 4 cancer. Had a urinary tract infection recently, and she started to fade. And we brought her into the emergency room fearing that she was suffering from sepsis. It turns out she wasn't. But there would have been no way to deal with it, no way to cure it.
Yes.
And this is going to be a very personal thing to the patients and to their families who cannot deal with the medicine we have now is not able to deal with this urgent condition of multi-organ failure. And so I'm very grateful that you've done your work and that you're doing what you do, John.
I never told you this. My mom died from sepsis in 2002. So I was there watching. They gave her vancomycin, they gave her everything. And there's nothing you can do.
Some of my best friends, my teachers actually, went to surgery. Surgery went well, and after surgery went into multi-organ failure. So we all have a personal story to tell on that particular problem.
And it's let's take a moment to ask how did you find each other? How did you meet, and how do you develop a trust for each other?
That is actually a beautiful story. I'm delighted to talk about it. So I was working away at UCSD. Boris was one of our students, and we were looking for this opportunity. I was looking for what ways can I possibly find to take some of these ideas and now start to translate to a patient. So I talked, of course, to my colleagues in the medical school. I have very close and wonderful working relationships with them. But it was clear to me that if I continue on that path, I'm going to be research, basic science understanding of it, without ever coming really to the possibility of testing it in man. So fortunately, the School of Engineering at UCSD introduced a new program that was then funded by a private foundation, which we call the Van Liebig Center. And that Van Liebig Center offered seed grants for specific ideas related to this work, but under one condition: you have to work together with a team, and that includes an investor. So that brought us together. John and I talked with each other. We sort of sniffed at each other and said, "Can I trust this person?"
Did they bring John to you? Is that how
Yeah,
it worked?
this is a normal review process. You have to make a presentation, and John is one out of several people sitting in the audience, and they have to vote. And then you, just like a normal NIH grant, you wait very quietly, and then one day you get an answer, and it says, "Yes, we're going to fund you." And that's what happens, and that's when I met John. And we sat together, and we said, well, what are the possibilities here? John learned about the process. It was very important that he understands important details about this, so that I don't ever put myself in a position where I potentially mislead him. But I keep him open in every detail about it. He knows exactly what the risk is. And that process then grew. John and I found ways to interact with each other in a very effective way, so that on one hand I can explain to him what the science are. John can add to that discussion then a real meaningful point of view. What is a viable enterprise that would allow patients to be helped with private money, and what would remain as a basic science? That interaction does not exist at the university. That is, when I interact with many wonderful colleagues at the university, it's always on the science level.
Yes.
But we don't talk about what could potentially be translated into a enterprise in a serious fashion that actually ends up in a translation. That discussion is very, I would call it very marginal. And that's one of the reasons why the university translation of basic science into actual companies and products is hampered. There's no question in my mind. So that was an opportunity for John and I meet. We became personal friends. And we have a very robust discussion about what is feasible, what is not feasible, what should be funded, what should not be funded. And my interest is always the same. I want to see this thing applied in humans. John wants to earn money. I'll take the money too, but John's driving force is the money, and it fits beautifully together.
Yeah.
But the trust factor, before you go, John, you say you had to sniff each other out and develop. What occurred? Can you recollect an event that occurred that, at which point you said, "Now I know I can trust this guy"?
John was asking me the right questions. He asking me very detailed, meaningful, directed, well-educated questions about the problem. Okay, he knew about the problem. He understands the problem. He was reading about it. He was reading textbooks about it. I was trying to educate him as much as possible, and he understood it. And I had a real resonating partner there. Yeah.
The real trigger here was after about a month of talking to Gert about the science. He would talk gel demography and enzymes, and I talked EBITDA balance sheets. And I finally said, "Gert, you're speaking French and I'm speaking Greek. So what do I need to do to understand you?" He said, "It's simple. You got an engineering degree. Get the molecular biology textbook. It's 1,740 pages." So I said, if I really want to do this, I'm going to have to understand his mind and what this is. So I spent 6 months and I actually read the book. And since I have an engineering degree, it was much easier, because the first part is chemical engineering and then electrical engineering. But he saw the commitment, and he said, no other VC has ever done this. And in fact, that's one thing wrong with VCs. They never take the time to understand the science. And I decided to make that commitment. So that was part of it. But as we talked about things, we had a shared view in terms of ethics and getting this in the clinic. Because we don't want to just make money. we want to also make sure this has an impact.
Want to make a difference.
Yeah, we want to make a difference.
Gentlemen, we'll take another short break. Be back in a minute.